I took a job at a remote burger joint in rural Texas a few months ago. I was 26 and needed a fresh start after losing my job at a diner in the city. The place was old and rundown, with flickering neon signs and a jukebox that only played the same 3 songs. At night, the emptiness weighed on me. It was nothing like the busy city. On my first night shift, I was tired. I was cleaning the grill when I heard rustling outside. I thought maybe it was the wind or a stray animal. My heart raced, but curiosity got the best of me. I stepped outside into the darkness. I looked toward the woods behind the restaurant and saw them shadows moving between the trees. A chill crept up my spine. I shrugged it off. It was probably just my imagination. As the nights went by, odd things kept happening. Food went missing, and I couldn't explain how. I found weird messages scratched into the counter, a simple "I see you." That made me feel uneasy. I often glanced out the window, catching dark figures moving among the trees. My coworkers often disappeared without a word. "They quit," someone said once, but I could see they didn't believe it. I wasn't sure what to think. I felt like something watched me, waiting for the right moment. One night, while cleaning up, I heard footsteps behind me. They were slow and heavy. When I turned around, no one was there. A cold sweat covered my skin. Maybe I was just tired. Everyone said I was working too much. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was out there. During my breaks, I convinced myself the isolation played tricks on me. Still, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. I caught myself looking out the window more often, hoping to see something to explain the unease deep in my bones. One night, I swore I saw a figure standing just beyond the trees, but it vanished when I blinked. I couldn't tell if I was losing my mind. Then came the night when I really felt it. I was in the back washing dishes when the air turned heavy. I stepped outside again, wanting to confront that shadow, but I found only darkness. My breath quickened. It felt like something was watching me, waiting for me to move. I heard someone say my name. My heart dropped. I turned quickly, but through the trees, there was only silence. The weight of that isolation was too much. I had to know what was watching. What if it was someone, or something, waiting to take me too? I stood frozen, staring into the darkness. Then, the rustling returned. It felt closer this time. I backed away slowly, my eyes darting around, desperately searching for what lurked just outside the edge of the light. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever watched me, it was waiting to claim me. The next night, I arrived with a sense of dread clinging to me. I clocked in, trying to shake off the unease from the previous evening. As I worked the grill, the smell of burgers filled the air, though they did little to satisfy my growing apprehension. My shift was uneventful at first. I flipped patties and cleaned up, but the nagging feeling that someone or something was out there never left me. Each sound felt amplified, echoing in my ears. Around midnight, I decided to take a break. I stepped outside, hoping the fresh air would clear my mind. I leaned against the building, staring at the trees, their shadows dancing under the light. That's when I noticed something new. It wasn't just shadows moving, there were actual shapes. Larger than before. My pulse quickened. I squinted, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Just then, I caught a glimpse of something white darting between the trees. It was fast. My heart raced. I froze for a moment, then moved closer to the edge of the light. At first I thought it was a deer, but the way it moved felt different. It shifted too quickly, too suddenly. I called out, "Hello?" My voice trembled, swallowed by the night. No answer. Nothing but silence. I turned back to the door, my instincts screaming for me to retreat. The unease I felt grew into fear. Then I heard a low, guttural growl that sent chills running down my spine. It came from the woods, dark and foreboding. I bolted inside and locked the door behind me, my hands shaking. My heart raced as I scanned the empty diner. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, making me feel even more isolated. I glanced out the window, searching the tree line, but everything looked still. Just shadows. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that it was just an animal. But something inside me couldn't let it go. Then I noticed a flicker of movement by the window. I squinted to see better, and my breath caught. A figure was standing there, outlined against the darkness. It was tall and thin, blending into the night like a part of the landscape. My mind screamed at me to run, but I couldn't make myself move. I was trapped between a need to understand and a fierce instinct to survive. Just as I thought of calling for help, the figure took a step closer, almost like it sensed my fear. Panic surged through me, and I hurried to the back of the diner. I grabbed my phone, my hands trembling as I tried to dial. But the line was dead. I looked up, my breath hitching now it was gone. I blinked at the window, and it was just dark land again. Then I heard a soft whisper. My name, clear as day. Come outside. I felt paralyzed by dread, but curiosity tugged at me. I had to know what this was, what wanted me. I approached the door slowly, every nerve in my body on high alert. I opened it just a crack, my breath mingling with the warm night air. That's when I saw it. A series of prints in the dirt, leading from the trees toward the diner. They were not animal tracks. They were something else altogether. I leaned down, studying the prints more closely. They were elongated and clawed, too large for any animal I knew. My stomach twisted as I traced one with my finger. The tracks looked wet, as if something had been out there recently. I glanced back at the dark woods, sensing an unsettling presence looming just beyond the trees. Just my imagination, I muttered, trying to convince myself. I backed away from the door and paced the diner, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like a swarm of angry bees. My pulse thudded in my ears. I needed a distraction, anything to take my mind off what I had just seen. I decided to check the freezer, hoping the familiar task would ground me. I grabbed the handle, but the moment I pulled it open, a chill swept through me. The freezer was unusually cold, and the familiar smell of old fries hit me. As I rummaged around, my thoughts strayed back to the prints. Who or what had made them? Suddenly, the bell above the door jingled. I jumped and closed the freezer door quickly, heart racing. Relief washed over me when I saw it was just a late-night customer. Despite the hour, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of hope. Maybe talking to someone would help clear the air. Hey there, I said as a man stepped inside, shaking off the night chill. He looked disheveled and tired. His eyes darted around the diner, taking in the empty seats. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Something weird happened tonight, I admitted, trying to gauge his reaction. You know anything about the woods out back? He chuckled uneasily. Depends what you mean by weird. Around here, the woods have stories. You get strange noises sometimes, especially at night. My heart sank. What kind of stories? Nothing that'll make you sleep easy, he said, leaning against the counter. They say there are things in those trees, things that used to walk on two legs. Legends mix with truth here, and most folks keep clear after dark. I felt a knot form in my stomach. You think that's what I saw? He looked at me intently, then nodded slowly. Could be. Most people don't talk about it. Better to ignore the shadows. His words sent a wave of dread washing over me, but the conversation had reinvigorated my curiosity. What do you mean stories? I pressed. Those things are drawn to fear, he said. You show any weakness and they'll catch your scent. You're best off making your peace with the dark. His cryptic warning only fueled my apprehension. As he spoke, I noticed something pass by the window again, a quick flash of white. My breath caught. I turned toward the glass, but it was gone. The chill of dread crept back, stealing my attention and forcing me to choose between staying in the diner or facing what was outside. Suddenly, the power flickered. The lights dimmed, and the hum of the diner cut off, leaving only the sound of the night. I cursed under my breath. What was happening? Then came the whisper again, slicing through the silence like a knife. Come outside. I felt the cold grip of fear tightening in my chest. Something was out there, and it was calling me. I stood frozen, the whisper echoing in my mind like a forgotten memory. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever it was had a name, and that name was meant for me. The man at the counter shifted uncomfortably, his expression tight as if he felt the weight of my indecision. "Are you going to go out there?" he asked, anxiety creeping into his voice. I didn't know. "No, I mean maybe. I should check." As I spoke, the bell above the door swung open again. A gust of wind followed, rattling the nearby windows and sending a shiver up my spine. My instincts warned me to retreat, but an uncontrollable urge pushed me forward. "Just a quick look," I told myself. I had to be sure it wasn't just my imagination. The man's eyes widened as I moved toward the door. "Are you serious? You don't want to cross into those woods?" "Why not?" I shot back, my frustration boiling over. As soon as I said it, I regretted my tone. He wasn't the enemy. I just need to see if there's anything out there. "Strange things happen in the dark," he replied, shaking his head. "You could find more than you bargained for." The last bit of rational thought slipped away as my hand reached for the doorknob. I nodded, swallowing my mounting fear, then stepped outside. The cold night air hit me hard, nearly knocking the wind out of my lungs. A deep silence fell around me, the only sound being the crunch of gravel beneath my shoes. As I moved away from the diner, I glanced back at the large glass windows glowing with static light. The man had crossed his arms, watching with a mixture of concern and disbelief. I stepped closer to the tree line, each footfall feeling more deliberate than the last. The shadows intertwined with the trunks, casting eerie shapes that played tricks on my mind. Just then, a rustle in the underbrush made me freeze. A flash of movement caught my eye, only this time it wasn't white. It was dark, blending perfectly with the night. "Hello?" I called, my voice shaky and unsure. The only response was the rustling growing louder, as if whatever lurked just beyond the trees was aware of my presence. My heart raced. I didn't want to be out here, not anymore. The whisper came again, clearer this time. "Come closer." Something in my gut told me to run, but I was rooted in place. The twilight illuminated patches of the forest, but the darkness beyond seemed to thrive on the unknown. I took a cautious step back, and that's when I noticed something glinting in the moonlight, half buried in the leaves. It was a metal latch. I knelt down, my curiosity overpowering my fear. I brushed dirt aside to reveal an old, rusty trapdoor. The edges were rough and splintered, but it looked like it hadn't been opened in ages. An unsettling chill slithered down my spine. Then, the ground shifted beneath me. A low growl filled the air, vibrating through my chest and freezing me where I knelt. Something was coming closer. I didn't need to see it to know that whatever it was, the shadows were alive. That's when I saw it, the outline of a figure stepping into the moonlight, moving with an unnatural grace. Panic surged through me. I dropped the latch and bolted back toward the diner, my thoughts scattered in the chaos of flight. As I darted back through the door, slamming it shut behind me, the man looked at me wide-eyed, but my breath was too ragged to answer. I had barely escaped the night, and my gut twisted with the knowledge that the true terror was only just beginning. The door rattled as I secured it, every heartbeat sounding like an alarm in the silent diner. The man at the counter didn't speak, but his eyes were filled with questions. I felt the weight of my own fear pressing down on me, squeezing my throat like a vice. "What did you see?" he finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I shook my head, still panting. "I don't know. It was just a shadow, but it moved like it was alive." His expression faded into something darker. "You're not the first to see something out there," he said, glancing toward the windows, as if expecting to see the forest manifest its horrors right in front of us. "People who go into those woods, they don't always come back the same, if they come back at all." "Why?" I pressed, wanting answers but dreading what he might say. "They say the woods have a life of their own. It takes things, but it also gives. You can hear whispers, feel something calling you." He paused, the air thick with unspoken fears. "It knows your name, you know." I didn't respond. My mind was racing, trying to piece together the fragments of my encounter. Why had I felt drawn to that latch? I ran a shaky hand through my hair and stared at the clock above the counter. It was almost midnight. A loud crash erupted from outside, making us both jump. The sound echoed off the diner walls, causing the fluorescent lights to flicker. I felt my stomach drop. Something had just disturbed the night. What was that? I asked, my voice rising an octave. Stay away from the windows, he ordered, moving toward a back room. I'll check. You just stay here. I watched him disappear into the shadows of the diner, my heart racing. I needed to know what was going on, but all I wanted was for the night to end. The silence that followed felt suffocating. Every bump and creak of the old diner made my skin crawl. Then I heard it. A soft scratching sound at the door, the same door I had just fled through. I pressed my back against the wall, straining to see what was happening. The scratching became a frantic clawing, relentless and chaotic. Fear bubbled up inside me. I didn't want to think about what lurked just outside. Is it you? I mumbled, grappling with the response of an unknown entity. Stop! I jumped as the door rattled again, harder this time. Let me in! A voice cried out, but it wasn't he, the man from the counter. It was deeper, more menacing. I recognized the whisper I'd heard in the woods. Don't! I yelled, knowing it was too late. Just then, the door burst open, and I staggered back, eyes wide. But it wasn't he, the figure from before. It was just a man from the counter, his face pale as he stumbled back inside. What did you see? He gasped, his hand clutching his chest. As he spoke, my gut twisted again. A hand reached through the doorframe behind him, monstrous and dark. It snaked around the entrance, stretching as if it were gauging the room, searching for me. Then everything went dark. The power had gone out, plunging the diner into an abyss of uncertainty. I blinked in the sudden darkness. The only sound was the frantic breathing of both of us, the tension almost tangible. I could feel the shape of the diner around me, but everything was shrouded in black. Stay close to me, the man whispered, his voice barely breaking the silence. His presence felt like a fragile shield against the terror that had crawled inside. I nodded, even though I wasn't sure he could see me. Then there was a noise, a faint rustling, like branches scratching against glass. Whatever was in the shadows was restless. I took a step back, but there was nowhere to go. It felt like the walls were closing in, squeezing the air from my lungs. Is it gone? I managed to murmur, but deep down, I knew it wasn't he. I could sense it, lurking just outside the thin veil of our sanctuary. Suddenly, the emergency lights flickered on, casting a sickly yellow glow throughout the diner. It was just enough to illuminate the man's terrified expression and the chaos around us, the overturned chairs, the flickering neon signs, and the door still swinging slightly on its hinges. We need to, he started, but a deep, guttural growl erupted from the back of the diner, cutting him off. My heart raced, blood pounding in my ears. I felt a rush of adrenaline as I instinctively grabbed a nearby steak knife from the counter. It was silly, but it was all I had. What was that? I whispered, hands trembling. The man's eyes darted to the back room, where the sound had come from. I don't know, he replied, his voice steady, though I could hear the cracks. But we can't stay here. We need to get to the car. I shifted my weight, ready to follow him into the unknown. But before we moved, the sound of shuffling footsteps emerged, slow and deliberate. They echoed through the diner as if something large was moving just beyond our sight. What is happening? I breathed, panic rising in my throat. Just stay quiet, he urged, leaning closer. If it senses us, we're done. A shadow crept from the back room, a shape that was larger than any person. It moved with an unnatural grace, fluid and purposeful. I could feel its eyes on me, like two burning coals piercing through the darkness. We can't wait any longer, I said, my voice breaking. It knows we're here. Without warning, the shadow lunged forward, and a chill shot through me. Run! The man shouted, grabbing my wrist. I bolted after him as he pushed toward the front of the diner, my heart pounding louder, drowning out the low growls behind us. We reached the entrance, but the door hung open as if inviting us into the night, a gateway to the horrors waiting outside. Dread coursed through my veins. I knew it was out there, waiting for us to cross that threshold. When I saw it standing just beyond the light, a figure cloaked in darkness, somehow familiar, and undeniably sinister. It held a glimmer of something in its hands, something that made my skin crawl. "Don't look!" the man yelled, but it was too late. I was paralyzed, caught in the gaze of the thing that had been whispering to me all night. "Come to me," it beckoned, its voice echoing in my mind, pulling me like a string tightened around my heart. I couldn't look away. And then everything went cold. I gasped when the cold hit me, like a bucket of ice water splashed against my skin. The figure jerked back slightly as if my reaction had surprised it. In that moment, the spell broke. I turned and ran, my legs pumping as if my life depended on it. "Keep going!" the man shouted behind me, his grip still firm on my wrist. I barely registered his presence as I sprinted past the wreckage of the diner, my eyes locked on the open door. The night air felt like a breath of fresh hope, but dread clung to me like a shadow. We were outside, but the streetlight flickered ominously, casting long shadows that danced as if alive. I could hear it. The guttural growl had morphed into something more frantic, more desperate. "This way," he urged, steering me to the right, toward the parking lot. My car was parked at the far end, but the asphalt seemed to stretch out before us like an endless abyss. As we dashed forward, I glanced back just in time. The figure was stepping out of the shadows, its shape now clearer, more defined. It had a face, a twisted mockery of a smile that chilled me to my core. "Faster!" he yelled, breaking me from my grim fascination. We crossed the parking lot, and as we neared my car, I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking violently. "Unlock it!" he shouted, his voice rising in urgency, and I managed to hit the button. The soft beep echoed like a gunshot. I leaped into the driver's seat, frantically slamming the doors shut behind me. He was right beside me, pressing against the window as I fumbled with the ignition. Panic surged as I realized my hands wouldn't cooperate, danced traumas with the key unknowingly. The figure loomed closer, its hollow eyes boring into me. I finally turned the key, the engine roaring to life. "Go!" he yelled, and I punched the gas. The tires screeched, and we shot forward, leaving the diner behind. But the reflection in the rearview mirror stopped my heart. The figure was standing there, its silhouette illuminated by the fading light, and then it simply turned and melted back into the shadows. "What was that thing?" I managed to breathe, my voice shaking. "I don't know," he replied, his eyes darting around, scanning the dark. "But it's not just here. It follows." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. "What do you mean, follows?" "It's connected to those who work here, those who dare to stay in this place," he said, his tone grave. "Tonight wasn't random." A cold shock ran through me. I suddenly remembered the strange feel of the diner's atmosphere, the whispers from behind the glass that I had dismissed as paranoia. "You think it was watching me?" "Not just you. It has been watching the diner for years, waiting for the right moment," he said, his gaze serious. "And you just drew its attention." My chest tightened as the reality settled in. I had taken a job here, and now something dark had taken notice. Before I could respond, a sudden jolt shook the car, sending us both lurching forward. "What was that?" I exclaimed, eyes wide with fear. "Something's still out there," he whispered, panic creeping into his voice again. We both turned to the window, breath held, as a low, eerie growl echoed through the night, sending chills down my spine. We weren't safe yet. And just then, the headlights caught a flash of movement at the edge of the road. I squinted, straining to see through the darkness, and my breath caught in my throat. The figure was there again, moving closer, knowing it had us trapped. "Drive. Now!" he shouted, urgency snapping my awareness back. I slammed the gear into drive and surged forward, but a new wave of dread washed over me. This was just the beginning. The engine roared as I sped down the road, my mind racing faster than the car. I had to think. Where to go? There was nothing but miles of darkness ahead. No towns, no familiar landmarks. Just me, my passenger, and whatever was lurking behind us. Do you know where it's headed? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He shook his head. It's not about where it goes. It's about what it wants. And it wants you. I swallowed hard. A sick unease twisted in my stomach. I didn't do anything. But you stayed, he said, his voice flat. You shouldn't have gone in there. That diner is cursed. Cursed? I scoffed, though a part of me shuddered at the truth in his words. You expect me to believe that? There was a silence between us, thick with tension. Then you better figure it out fast. It won't give up. I turned down a dirt road that branched off the main highway, looking for a place to hide. The trees loomed overhead, dark sentinels that seemed to close in as I drove deeper. I finally spotted a small, abandoned gas station, its windows boarded up and the sign hanging crookedly. This is as good a place as any, I said, pulling to a stop. I turned off the engine. The sudden silence was deafening. We both stared at the entrance, my heart pounding against my ribs. Do you think it saw us? I wondered aloud, my voice barely a whisper. It doesn't need to see to know, he replied grimly. We'll wait here for a moment. If it follows, we'll need to move again. I nodded, but dread knotted in my chest. It was like being hunted. The thought chilled me more than I expected. I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that whatever had been watching me wouldn't be dissuaded so easily. Minutes passed in oppressive silence. Then, without warning, the eerie growl resonated through the night, closer this time. I felt it in my bones, a bone-deep vibration that rattled my teeth. Get down! He hissed, and we both ducked below the windows. The growl grew louder, morphing into a screech that sent shivers down my spine. I peered through the gap in the window, my heart racing. I could see something moving, a shadow flitting between the trees, almost too quick to catch. Suddenly, the back of the gas station shuddered. Something heavy thudded against the wall. I held my breath, eyes wide. Did you hear that? I whispered, terror creeping in. He nodded, but his expression had turned dark. We can't stay here. We need to move. Before I could process his words, I heard a loud crash, glass shattering, the unmistakable sound of something large breaking in. I felt my pulse quicken. Now, he urged, and we scrambled out of the car. As I stepped onto the gravel, I glanced back to where I had parked. A figure loomed by my car, too dark and distorted to see clearly. An overwhelming fear gripped me. I started to back away. Then everything went dark. I stumbled back, the darkness closing around me like a suffocating blanket. My heart was hammering in my chest, and a rush of adrenaline pushed me forward. I could barely hear the panic in his voice ringing in my ears as he pulled me deeper into the gas station. Over here, he whispered, pulling me behind an old fuel dispenser. We crouched low, the musty smell of gasoline and dust mixing in the stale air. The growl had receded for a moment, but I could feel the anxiety building in the pit of my stomach. What is that thing? I murmured, desperate for answers. It's not going to stop until it finds you. It's been waiting. His voice was grave. We have to keep quiet. It might still be close. I listened, straining to hear anything. The sound of rusty metal creaking and the rustle of leaves in the wind formed a symphony of dread. The only break was the ticking of an old wall clock somewhere inside. After a few moments, just when I thought I could breathe again, a chilling shriek cut through the stillness. It sent a fresh wave of terror crashing over me. I bit my lip, trying to suppress the urge to scream. What do we do now? He glanced at the back of the gas station. There's an old storage room. If we can lock ourselves in there, maybe we can wait it out. I nodded, though a part of me screamed to run. We shifted quietly, moving from our hiding place toward the rear of the building. The groans of the old structure echoed every shuffled step. My eyes darted around, half expecting the creature to leap at us from the shadows. We reached the door to the storage room, heavy and worn. He pushed it open slowly, and I felt a wave of foul air wash over me. The room was dark, filled with dusty shelves and boxes stacked haphazardly. Flickering shadows danced across the walls as we stepped inside. He shut the door behind us, and I held my breath as he fumbled with the rusty lock. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. Then, something slammed into the exterior of the gas station, rattling the walls. I jumped back, fear clawing at my throat. What was that? Just hold on, he said, finally securing the door. It's looking. Looking for what? I asked, panic creeping back in. For you. I fumbled for the light switch but found only darkness. That's when I heard it, a low whisper, almost a chant, seeping through the walls. It was rhythmic, almost alluring, and I felt my mind slipping away for just an instant. But what unnerved me even more was the scraping sound, like claws on metal, moving closer. I turned to him, wide-eyed. We can't just sit here. We need to do something. He stared at me, fear etched on his face, then pointed at a small window above a stack of boxes. We can climb through. Before I could respond, the door rattled violently. The creature was trying to break through. I knew we had no time to waste. Help me with this, I said, reaching for a box to stand on. As I did, something crashed against the door with a force that shook the room. Come on! He shouted, urgency spilling over. As I scrambled up, I froze. The chanting was louder now, reverberating in my mind. I felt a pull towards it, almost a compulsion. But I resisted, desperate to break free. Then everything fell silent. Too silent. What just happened? I whispered, dread creeping back, and I glanced down at the door that seemed to bow inward. That's when I saw it. A shadow flickered, taking shape. Something was right outside, waiting for the chance to get in. What is it? He whispered. I don't know, I breathed. But there was no time to wonder. I had to keep climbing. If I didn't get through that window, I would never know what was out there. I squeezed through the small window just as the door shuddered under another assault. My heart pounded in my chest as I dropped down into the overgrown grass outside. I glanced up, not daring to breathe, and saw him grapple with the last bit of the stack. He pulled himself through just as the door exploded inward. The creature let out a roar that rattled my bones, drowning out whatever chant still lingered in my mind. Without thinking, I turned and ran, the rustling of leaves and snapping of twigs sounding far too close behind us. We sprinted toward the tree line, adrenaline pumping through my veins like a lifeline. The night was thick with shadows that seemed to stretch and move independently of the moonlight. I could hear the guttural growls grow louder, taste the fear lingering in the air, but I pushed it down. Over here! He shouted, leading me toward a cluster of trees that formed a makeshift cover. I followed him, ducking beneath low branches as we tried to distance ourselves from the gas station. Then, everything fell eerily silent. I exchanged a worried glance with him. Did we lose it? It's never far away, he replied, his voice low, but I could hear the strain. We need to keep moving. A crash erupted behind us, branches snapping like twigs as the creature burst from the shadows. I felt a surge of cold terror, my instincts screaming at me to run faster. I jumped over fallen logs and thick roots, praying I wouldn't stumble. The night felt alive, pulsating with an energy I couldn't fully grasp. As we dove deeper into the cover of trees, a strange flicker darted across my vision, glimpses of other shapes moving parallel to us. My breath quickened. They weren't just shadows, they were real, tangible beings lurking in the dark. I opened my mouth to speak, to tell him we weren't alone, but the words seized in my throat. Don't stop! He barked, pulling my arm stronger. We wound deeper into the woods, branches clawing at our skin. I could hear disjointed whispers swirling around us, echoing warnings or invitations I couldn't tell. My heart raced, erratic and wild. What did they want? A flash of white loomed ahead, almost inviting. There! I pointed, squinting against the darkness. My instincts screamed at me to keep running, to ignore the beckoning light, but curiosity tugged me. It felt as if the whispers were rising to a crescendo in my mind, pleading for release. They're trying to lure you, he shouted, snapping me back. We can't. But it was too late. I stumbled toward the brightness, caught in the pull of something much larger than myself. The shadow at the edge of the radiance shifted, looming ever closer. I stopped, torn between running back and approaching the light. No! I cried, feeling the weight of the choice heavy in my chest. I could almost hear my name being called, feel the pulse of something ancient thrilling underfoot. And then, the forest erupted around us. The creature burst into view, a twisting mass of shadow and claws, fear spilling off it like smoke. It screamed, eyes burning into mine, and time warped into slow motion. I thought of the diner, the shadows cast behind the glass, the whispers that used to feel like imagination. Run! He pulled at me, and I snapped back to the moment, our terror flowing into one desperate escape. We sprinted toward the white glow, feeling the darkness claw at our backs, certain it would seize us the moment we faltered. With one final push, we burst through the trees and into a clearing. The brightness washed over us, wrapping like a safety blanket. There, a strange facade stood, a weathered figure in dazzling white, a statue-like shape that hummed with an energy that felt both wrong and right. I turned to him in confusion. What is this? I don't know, he said, staring in awe. Then suddenly, the air shifted, the dark shadows recoiling. It was afraid of this light. But the pull of the darkness remained, insidious and insatiable. I could practically feel it whispering promises of power and freedom if I surrendered. As I stood in frozen uncertainty, the man drew back, fists clenched. We need to decide now. His voice was steady, but I could see the fear clinging to him. Decision? I echoed. But before either of us could move, the shadows streamed toward us in a swift flood, hungry and unrelenting. The edge of the clearing flickered, caught between the two worlds, one light, one dark. I glanced at him, at the hum of the figure, and then at the shadows lashing out with a vengeance. In one agonizing moment, I felt myself teeter on the edge of choice. I could step into the light, accept whatever promise it held, or succumb to the shadows, returning to whatever fate awaited me within them. I drew a breath, but no answer settled in my heart. The growl was rising again, shadows surged with hungry abandon behind us. And I realized, no matter what I chose, the truth was still shrouded in ambiguity. I had ditched the diner, but the darkness and everything that came with it hadn't disappeared. It lingered, waiting for its chance, and I had opened a door I might never close. Looking between the two worlds in the swirling chaos of shadow and light, I felt a twinge of terror and an odd sense of peace, knowing some choices would always remain unanswered, lurking just outside the edges of understanding. The chase wouldn't end here. And something deep within me knew I hadn't heard the last of the whispers.